Welcome, everybody, to the Loud and Drunk podcast. This is Dan bringing us in. Work-life balance has become something of a trend in the last few years. In 2022, I believe, quiet quitting was all over TikTok and all over the news. And then it morphed into something called resenteeism. And now also millennials seem to be doing a little thing called quiet vacationing. We are going to get into what these terms mean and also what do they mean for employers and employees. Justin, as a government employee, you've never even thought of quiet quitting, right?
You know what's funny? So, now we have all these terms for these things. I've been at my job for 20 years now. And yeah, I have resented my job a lot. And I have wished to quit my job a lot. But, learning these terms as actual things is quite hilarious. So I'm actually quite excited to get into it. We have a very, I think, unique spread across all of us here as we all work in different sectors. And I think this is going to be quite interesting.
Moses, you're filled with bitterness and resentment, right? So are you working on the next phase to resenteeism?
I've transitioned into just alcoholism, so it's more like quiet drinking on the job.
I like that. That's more on brand for you and for this podcast. Quiet drinking on the job.
And I am Torgo Ballwanger. Very happy to be here. Very excited. I mostly moonlight as a botanist and philanthropist. I just really want to dive into the meat of this conversation.
But before we get into all of that, I want to remind you, if you enjoy this podcast, please subscribe to this podcast. And if you are listening to us on YouTube, hit the notification bell. YouTube will not tell you when we have content out. They won't even show you our content on the front page. Also, do me a favor, help me get paid by bookmarking loudanddrunk.com. All right, guys, let's get into this. TikTok was ablaze in 2022, I believe it was, with a little thing called quiet quitting. Now, before we get into all of this, we should define what we're talking about
please.
Here. So quiet quitting is this idea that you just go into work and you essentially just do the 9 to 5. You don't do anything that's considered above and beyond. You don't go the extra mile.
You're doing the bare minimum to maintain your job status, and that's about it, I imagine.
Yes. And then what we also have here is resenteeism.
Okay.
Let me give you real quick from the CNBC article. In 2022, business leaders everywhere were afraid of quiet quitting, a trend in which employees subtly disengaged from work and did the least they could get away with without drawing attention. Lately, a new trend has emerged from the embers of quiet quitting, resenteeism. Resenteeism is a combination of a resentment and absenteeism. It's a growing trend where employees continue working in roles they find dissatisfying because they either can't find a better suited job or they think they won't be able to.
Interesting.
So they kind of go in together because you get a job, you quiet quit because you know you can't leave.
Right.
But you're not actually dissatisfied with the work. You're just kind of disengaged to a degree. You're just doing whatever you need to do what the job description essentially says.
That's a type of dissatisfaction.
Yeah. But it's not as dissatisfied as if you're into this resenteeism thing, where you are you hate the job actively.
Okay.
So I'm sorry to interrupt. I feel like one of them has a sentiment of I guess it's right in there. It's this resentment, this genuine disdain for the business that you're working for. And the other one is more internal, I just don't like this.
Yeah.
But I don't have necessarily something against the employer. I just don't like the job that I have.
Yeah.
There's a very distinct but small difference between these two that I'm kind of picking up on. It's quite interesting because it can be a broad swath of why.
Yeah. How many ways can you dislike your job? I mean, it's really infinite. It's we're all going to give different answers.
It all just seems like it's just 2 degrees of laziness. One is lazy because you're just lazy, and the other is I hate this place, so I'm going to be lazy.
To put this in perspective, you are the laziest person here. By far.
You know what? I don't resent anything.
It's hilarious because I think, and this is not for right now, but as we go through these things, I think there is a distinct difference.
Also, what I'm trying to think here too is for quiet quitting, is it necessarily that you're quietly quitting your job, or are you just actively trying to make sure that they're not taking advantage of you?
That is That is a very valid point, which I think I will hammer on a bit.
It's two kind of shades right there. I don't know how far we're supposed to dive into this right now, but yeah, I mean, that kind of like I compare that to the different sentiments that existed over time, where you've got people, if you go back to the 1950s, where they had very different perspectives on what it was to do your job. I would say that back then, people were much more married to it, so on and so forth. And today you have in general, a different perspective on it, you know?
Yeah. On the face of what kind of strikes me, like it's the difference between apathy and despondency.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I like that. Yeah.
So someone who doesn't agree with you, if you are familiar with this man, he's Kevin O'Leary from Shark Tank, also known as Mr. Wonderful. I know that will drive you crazy, Moses, because he's not Paul Orndorff. No. Back in 2022, he appeared on CNBC to talk with Shepard Smith. I don't know when he went from Fox News to CNBC, but I don't care about what these people do with their careers. This is what he had to say about quiet quitting.
Now, some ideas are bad ideas, and some ideas are stupid ideas, but very rarely can you combine both. And that's what we have here. This is the dumbest idea I've ever heard in launching a career. And what I'm hoping I can do, and I've told the recruiters, because I've got about 10,000 people inside of the companies that we're investors in, plus the supply chains, I've asked them, can we identify these people early and help them get jobs with our competitors? Because this is the most competitive weapon I've ever seen.
This is the
If you're a quiet quitter, you're a loser. You're un-American. That's what I think. When you bring somebody in that slams shut their laptop at 5 o'clock, you're introducing a cancer into your culture. Eventually, you're going to have to do surgery and cut it out. The whole idea would be avoid these people. I don't know where this started. It's the worst idea I've ever heard because it's against what we do in business. We try and build teams that work together to achieve something, set objectives and work together. It doesn't matter whether you're working anymore at 6 a.m. or 2 in the morning. You're just getting your job done. That's the freedom the economy's giving you now on a distance basis. Nobody's asking you to work 9 to 5. They're asking you to get your job done. If you walk in your interview and say, I only work from 9 to 5 and then I stop working, I can't wait to get you into my competitor.
Oh, go buy TikTok, you sack of shit.
Yeah.
What if I get my job done before 5?
Yeah.
Can I leave early?
Yeah. Like, fuck you. Like, first of all, the part where he's like, it's un-American. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but that's
like working 9 to 5 is un-American.
I honestly, I was like, now that I've just heard that, these words in many ways just empowered me. I feel like I was on the side of you guys in some ways, at least what I was feeling, where it's that like, you know, there are like reasons that people are sometimes disenfranchised. And now I realize that you should be very grateful for the housing and the food that you're provided. And you just need to do your job 24 hours a day other than when you're sleeping. And honestly, like maybe cut out some of that food, you know? Because like that's a charity from the business. Like you really need to be entirely focused on this company that you don't own any stock in. And as a billionaire, I can tell you that I pulled myself up from my bootstraps because I was like I had a trust fund, of course, and it was worth about $1 billion. But I've built upon that as the market grows, and this could be you too if you just like were willing to work 9 a.m. until 9 a.m. and just like do that and stop like blaming other people and asking for more than that. I don't understand. And now, honestly, I'm offended. Well, I'm not sure why I'm on this podcast.
Sounds like we need more pizza parties.
oh boy. Torgo?
Yes.
That was very well put. And
I
thank you for that contribution.
Yeah.
But like this very much leads into like you see with these people, these face. Obviously, there's a show for it, the Shark Tank, whatever it is, over the Dragon's Den, which I think it was copied from. Yes, you have these like multimillionaires, if not billionaires, or close to it.
Yeah,
they
people
like
who put the work in.
They like to have this hard line talk of pretty much exactly what O'Leary is that, or O'Leary?
Kevin O'Leary.
Yeah. What he said in that clip there, and it's to me, it's just so funny because that might be good for like. You're 2-3 levels down. You're going through like your executive positions and stuff. But like your regular fucking work, like that is the most bananas shit ever.
I know. I didn't pull this clip for the show, but in a separate clip, he says that people don't work longer because they want to make more money, whether it's because they desire to work longer. And like one of the most, we talked about gaslighting in a previous episode.
Right.
This is the most gaslighting corporate bullshit I've ever heard in my life.
And he's not the only person that said that. You could look online. There's like a million examples of this in the past handful of years. Now that everything is online in a video clip, any of these guys, it's what it is. And like Mark Cuban's probably the same. He just tries to hide behind the nice guy. I'm gonna help him the low man out situation. Fuck him. He's probably an asshole too.
Yeah,
he's no Elon Musk.
No.
So if you quiet quit and that means you're un-American, well, I got a stat for you, Mr. O'Leary. I know we're 2 years behind, but according to Gallup, quiet quitters make up at least 50% of the U.S. workforce. Probably more, Gallup finds.
50% of Americans aren't Americans? My God, the terrorists are winning.
How's anything getting done?
Here's another thing.
Because of the hard work of that
Of the other
O'Leary
people?
guy, whatever the fuck his name is.
Yeah, Kevin
Mark
O'Leary.
Cuban, yeah. And Elon Musk.
Here's another thing. So, like, they like to go to, it still happens a lot with, like, this generational thing where we label the generations, and, like, obviously the following generations are never as good as the leading
They're
generations.
not.
Never have been. Ever since the
everyone
greatest
younger
one,
than us
you
is
know, it's all
dumb.
downhill.
Yeah, they don't work as hard.
However, it's like, so I've worked, obviously, for the government for almost 20 years now, just shy of it. August will be 20 years for me. And I've
Mazel
worked, I work with people today that are in their 70s, and I work with people today that are like 19 in my job.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, there are generational differences, but they're not that different. The 70-year-olds are complaining about the same shit the 19-year-olds are complaining about.
Because you get jaded by the corporate lifestyle.
Right,
like,
right.
you know you're not going to get a raise.
Right.
You know you're not getting promoted. So why are you putting any extra effort into your job that's just asking you to do more and give you nothing in return?
Well, Dan, I'm gonna.
You don't even get that.
No, that's not even.
And
That's
also,
not even
I can't feed my family with appreciation. Oh, hello, debt collectors. I want to pay you with appreciation for my workforce.
Your reward is the same thing as what you feed your family with, and that's patriotism. We do this for America. You get in there and you do the extra mile. You pull yourself up by your bootstraps. And if you don't have bootstraps, then you fucking make them. You make them in your own time. Because when you're working for a Walmart or a Wawa or whatever fucking companies you guys work for, the bottom line is that this is about feeding them because they're the job creators, right? We all believe in President Reagan, God rest his soul. And this is a man who really, like, he told us how we're able to do this, how we can beat the communists and the socialists and the haters and the Bidens and so on and so forth. And I think that if we were just able to take that advice for a moment and to really lean into it and actually pull ourselves up, I think that that's where it is. And then we're all living better lives. Maybe not in a year or in 5 years or in 10 years, maybe not in our lifetimes, but one day, your children, your ancestors, they will have this American dream. If we can just all get out of our own way and just listen to these billionaires who obviously made it through their hard work. What an asshole!
That was probably the best place.
That really was well timed. I can't argue with that. Yeah. I teed myself up for it.
Now we have all these names for these things. So like the quiet quitting, the resenteeism, and another one that we'll get to
talk
shortly.
about that in a little bit.
One thing I can tell you that's universally true in the span of my career, I started in 2004 and it's still the same now in 2024, is that the folks I worked with that were close to retirement had, even if they were 5 years out, had day counters getting to that retirement day. It's still very much the same today. And the flavors of bullshit tend to change and morph over time depending on situation, economy, and all these things like that. But it's just the more things change, the more they are kind of the same to the original stuff.
Well, similarly, when I was in the service, people were like that with their time remaining in the service. They were like, oh, yeah, like, how much time do you got left? Or somebody would say like, oh, I'm short. Because you just got so jaded, you got so bitter and resentful towards the service that you were like, I can't wait to get the hell out of here.
And all that I hear, when you say that, it just sounds to me like it's un-American. You know, you signed up to fight for this country and now you're just like aching to get out.
It's
and you haven't even given your life yet? Like, I mean, come on.
Yeah, you might as well just give the life away.
Yeah, I mean, come on. You know, like, this is, you know, if you're not going to do it, then who is? Because I'm not. I'm not going to do it.
Because you pulled yourself up by your bootstraps.
That's right. And I need to make money to pay the government to give you money so that you can go and die somewhere. For a meaningless cause, but I want my gas to be cheap, Dan.
You son of a bitch. I'm in.
I'm having fun with the next
thank
segment.
you, and thank you. And this might be a complete, because I know very little about Mr. Kevin O'Leary.
Yeah.
This might be a complete blindside. I don't know. But, like, is he the most patriotic person around? Is he calling, like, anybody un-American?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure he had a failed run for the Republican nomination. Maybe like 10, 12 years ago or something like that. So I don't think that he has any room to talk, honestly.
I just want to know what his, like, anchor is that he gets to decide, like...
Yeah, well, he gets to decide this, but also he gets the quiet quit from, an election, but, like, he didn't pull himself up from the bootstraps back then.
Damn, that's solid right there. That was solid. I don't even have a retort for it.
No, that's good, solid work right there.
I hope he doesn't listen to this. I really like that
I hope
guy.
he does.
Yeah.
We can make fun of his stupid bald head.
He might be so egotistical that he's mentioning anything.
We're going to get some hate mail from this.
Bring it. Oh, is that...
And I'm going to quiet quit my laptop that day.
So is quiet quitting not a thing ever except until 2002?
Well, I mean, this was a different name for it, I guess, but it's always been this. It's
always existed, I'm sure. Now we have names for things.
Yeah. And I would say that I agree with the premise that this is not quiet quitting. It's actually just setting boundaries. I'm not going to let this employer take advantage of me. I'm going to just do the work that you hired me to do. And if you want me to do something else, then fucking pay me for it.
I think, just to chime in on that, I think there's no way to refute that it's always existed.
Yeah.
There's always been that some people, lazy people maybe it's Moses, I don't know. But some people are they're disenfranchised with their work and they're going to do a half-assed job because that's how they feel. So it's a meeting of your personal feelings about your employment and the actual job itself, which is usually like empirical. It's like a factual thing. You have to fucking do this job and that's what you get paid for. And I think that that's always existed. Yeah. And I can't speak much to like the entirety of history, but like in terms of like just American history, if you look at like the 1950s and such like that, that totally existed, but it was very uncouth to talk about how you didn't like how your employer was treating you.
Yeah.
So I think that people did feel that way, didn't talk about it, but still engaged in the same behavior. And that's why we have the word for it today, that now you can talk about it. And maybe that's because it's much more common today, or maybe it's just a change in the culture. I don't know.
I think it would have something to do with the change in culture. Since this was a TikTok thing, that means more and more people were just putting their phone in front of their faces and just talking about how dissatisfied with work.
It definitely opens it up. Yeah. Social media basically allows everybody to talk. And for whatever the pros and cons are there, you definitely have this element where someone else can validate you because they're dealing with the same situation. If you go back to the 1950s and we're all putting on the same face, it's four dudes in this room. If it was, 1955, we would all walk into this room and say, like, how are you? Be like, I'm doing great. Can I have a bottle of whiskey, please? And then you just pound that, and we're all like supposed to pretend that everything's fine. And then we beat our wives, and that was the nature of the way in which people communicated at that time. Today, it's much more couth to talk about it. And I think that absolutely that things like TikTok and social media in general have to have some sort of a tie-in with.
Can I take a moment here and like give a window into like my work life? So I've been at my job for 20 years. I work for the government, but in my job, you cannot be promoted because of merit.
Yeah.
There are step increases. So like any increase you get, you can't, it's not a job you can go to your boss and like, I think I'm doing a really good job. Could I be in contention for a raise? That doesn't exist in my job. In my job, it's everybody's the same.
Isn't that amazing?
The good, like the people that care about their work, the good employees that care about, say, their customers and doing a good job for them, and the people that burn the system to just try to get the most they can get out of it doing the least amount of work.
Yeah.
Now, for someone, I would consider myself a go-getter employee. I go above and beyond, not because I get any recognition for it, because I don't, because I have relationships with my customers. And that's what boosts me. Now, I actually get, for doing customer service, I get written up, I get reprimanded because I'm not racing from stop to stop to stop. But that's not what I'm in it for. I know I'm not going to get a merit-based increase in my pay. So the only thing I can try to do is try to get it on my direct front of dealing with my customers. It's a wild thing. The government sector is crazy.
Yeah.
It's like, you're crazy to go into it. I'm too far invested. I'm 20 years in.
Yeah.
And I'm just trying to hopefully get whatever that promise was that I was promised when I signed up. But like, to be recognized the same as the shitty, you could be the best employee, but be recognized as on the same level as the shittiest employee.
It's very similar in the service because you could get promoted for merit.
Yeah.
The unfortunate thing, though, is that in order for that to happen, you would actually have to have the captain promote you. And if you're on an aircraft carrier like I was, good luck. You might as well you have a better chance of meeting the president, essentially.
Right.
And you run into this, you are effectively treated, like you said, at your job, you're treated the same way as the shittiest, person there.
Yeah.
And the only way to actually increase your pay is to do things that you probably shouldn't be doing when you're 18, 19, 20 years old, like marrying a fat woman or
I was going to say it's sex stuff, right?
Yeah. It's yes, of course, because if you
of course it is, Pete.
if you get married and have kids, then your pay will increase because now you have dependents. Which is a toxic way to go about it, because now you're encouraging people to go out there and get married.
It's wild. It truly is. Like I said, I'm an old timer now in my job. And I tell my bosses all the time, which they're all like 21, which is hilarious. Because what they do is somebody comes into the job and they find somebody that will take orders without knowing anything about the job. And they're like, you're in line for management. So I get in trouble all the time. Yeah. Because the rules change every day. Even though we have a 900-page written contract, the rules change every day because it doesn't matter. They can do whatever they want. We just have a grievance process, which we typically lose anyway, but it's whatever. My problem is all this time, 20 years, like it has a lot of weight. I've spent a lot of my life. Like I'm not making it to 100. I mean, I might if my family curse comes through. But it's to be a person who takes pride in their work and then be exactly the same as somebody who's doing, let's say, this quiet quitting type thing or resenteeism or whatever you want to call it. Yeah. Oh boy, it poisons the whole pool.
I feel like that's what it is. It's I think you use the right words. It's that it's taking pride in your work, and there's a degree to which that is increasingly difficult to do. It seems to me. Part of that is just the way in which people are taken away from the value of their work. Certainly, I mean, that's like a historical thing, industrialization, where it's like that. You used to have like fucking cobblers who like made shoes and they would like get leather and this and that and whatever.
As a quick interjection, if you don't mind, I do think we have to recognize that like people, they fall into the full spectrum. There are people that love their job, love everything about it. They want to do the best, if not for the pay, but for themselves.
They're called Americans,
Yeah. But like, there are also people that will do everything they can to do the least amount of effort and get the most amount of gain.
And they're in Guantanamo Bay right now. Yeah.
It's a wildly thing. Like I said, it's nothing new. Now we have names for things. Yeah. But I think it's like a human condition type deal.
I would agree with that, yeah.
Yeah, I would just say, too, like for the resenteeism part of it, the beginning aspect of it is the quiet quitting part where you're like, I'm not going to get this raise, so why would I put anything further? And then once you're proven right and you're not getting the raise and you're not getting the promotion, then all of a sudden you're like, well, why the hell do I continue to work here? Well, you continue to work here because we're in an age where the job market kind of sucks. If you have a job and you need a job, feed yourself and pay your mortgage or pay your rent or whatever, well, then you're stuck. You're just trapped in your job.
Can I make another quick interjection here? So, like, with my situation, I think I'm a fairly intelligent guy. I think I'm a very capable person. I'm very good at learning things and picking them up quick. I am kind of in a rut because, like, I'm essentially 2/3 of the way through my career. And I'm like, well, why would I leave to lose all these promised benefits at the end? You know what I mean? Like, I tried college. It wasn't for me. I walked into this job while I was in college. And it's been momentum since. And it was a very good job for me. I bought a house. I had money when my peers didn't have money. But now it's just like the money and everything aside, it's like my mental state. Yeah. Which is like, I think the killer, because it's like 20 years of trying to be a good employee, like for yourself. And then 20 years in, I mean, it's not just a realization now, but 20 years of just being like, oh, that's great. You're a good employee, but you're still the same as Joe Schmo, who's the fucking idiot.
Yeah, your situation reminds me. I'm sorry to keep bringing up the Navy thing, but it's just the thing that's the most equivalent to it.
A lot of kinship there, and my job was where a lot of ex-military people go because they can buy back their military time towards their retirement.
Yeah, and so like you're pretty much in a situation where you're like kind of like a chief or just like you're an officer or something like that, but you can't make it past the certain pay grade anymore.
Right.
And so
I'm as high as I can go.
Yeah,
that's it.
You're as high as you can go, but like they can't get rid of you either.
No.
So like you're just like, all right, I'm just here. I'm just here for the amount of time that I decide that I am here.
Yeah.
It's interesting the way that work. Like, there's plenty of people who just hang on for the retirement aspect in the service. And I was just like, oh my God, to realize that like you're 15, I'm just talking now, like hypothetically,
Right.
You're 15 and you're like, I got to wait at least 5 more years to get out so I can have retirement benefits and all that stuff. It's just, that would drive me nuts.
Well, it's also like, all right, so the last probably tag in on my behalf, I started when I was 19.
Yeah.
I'll have my 30 years of service. So like full vested pension if it's there when I get there.
Yeah.
Which is always a big question.
It's not.
Yeah.
It's not.
But like there's an MRA, a minimum retirement age. I'll be 49 when I have my 30 years of service. I still got to work another 8 years to quote unquote retire.
And what I will say, like working in the corporate world, if it hasn't come across so far, that like I empathize with these people because I kind of feel the same. I have worked jobs where I feel like you are never going to treat me the way I should be treated because I have worked when I was younger, hard charger. I'm going to like do everything I can possibly do to make sure that you notice that I'm doing a good job. You're going to notice that
is Dan, if I can say anything about it, that is your nature. You are a consummate professional.
Yeah. But the problem is, even if you are noticeably doing a baller job, they're still like, there's no money in the budget.
Right.
Meanwhile, the corporation that you work for just had record profits in Q4.
Dan, I got to disagree. I'll bet you $10,000 right now that if you were putting in half the work of the CEO, you would already be getting paid double what he is right now.
I'm sorry that my golf swing isn't as good as the CEO.
I'm sorry too.
But that's like one of the things that also drives you crazy. Like one of the first jobs I had coming out of the service, not really an electrician job, but it was an electrical job. And instead of giving people raises for that year, they made a branded motorcycle and they showed it off. I think it was Letterman, maybe it was Leno, but like it was like, I haven't worked there in like over a decade.
I'm sorry. It's not that I didn't hear you. It's that I was upset by what I think I heard.
Yeah.
Because you spend this shit on the stupidest things.
They did.
And then instead of, because you are the product. If you're a technician, you go out there and you work on the product to make sure it works, to ensure that the customer is satisfied with what they're doing. Yeah. And what I'm doing now, I'm creating the product so people can watch it on their phones.
Yeah.
Once you're like, oh no, we don't really need you. Now I understand supply and demand. You might have a whole bunch of people that want to do it. But if you have somebody that does a good job, does it on time, and habitually gets you, let's just say 5 figures in terms of views.
And you fire them and replace them with an AI.
Yes.
Yeah, well,
exactly.
Other people are cheaper than you.
Yeah. And they'll go and they'll get like the 18-year-old or the kid that's fresh out of college.
I got this guy Sanjay in Bangladesh, and man, his English sucks, but Dan, he like almost talks like you sometimes. I feel like we might have something here. All right, we're gonna switch up the podcast next week.
Welcome everybody to the podcast.
Well, now we're getting to a racist.
No wonder you.
And you tell me to not get a spend.
You can't do that. That's offensive.
Well, if nobody has listened to this podcast before,
right.
then I am probably the most offensive somehow out of everyone here. I don't know how, because I'm supposed to be the straight-laced guy.
You're the woke motherfucker here.
Yeah, the one in camouflage is the woke one.
Yeah, that's right. I'm wearing my stars and bars, Anna.
All right, guys, you want to get into this quiet vacationing thing?
Yeah, so this is something I'm not quite familiar with.
All right, so I pulled this up from the Business Insider. Why quiet quit when you can quiet vacation? Millennials are taking time off without telling their bosses. Gen Z has a different tactic. Millennials are taking time off without informing their employers. A Harris poll found that 38% of millennial respondents had secretly taken time off. So instead of putting in your PTO, you just go somewhere because you're working remotely.
Right.
And then you just like do the little things that...
A question then.
Yeah.
Is this more or less a term that really only applies to remote workers?
It would have to be.
It would have to be. Yeah.
Okay.
Any other way.
That's where I think I got confused about it before.
Yeah.
But the job is still getting done.
What's that?
The job is still getting done, isn't it? You're just doing it kind of like
Christina would very much disagree with you.
Like, how do you not notice somebody is gone?
Because they like set it up on their computer that way.
Well, I can read a little bit more into this.
Yeah, please read a little. I can give by proxy through Christina a little insight later on. Dan, please finish this up.
In a new study of 1,170 Americans conducted by the Harris poll, nearly 4 out of 10 millennial respondents said they've taken time off of work without informing their employer. That's compared to 24% of Gen Zers and Gen Xers who reported doing the same. The survey was conducted between April 26th and April 28th. Millennials were also most likely to say they've taken actions to make it appear that they were working when they weren't. 38% of millennials said they moved their mouse just to keep their status on computer messaging apps active, compared to 30% of Gen Zers. And then another aspect of this, I don't know if I already said it, is that you just schedule your emails to go out at certain times.
Isn't this just fraud?
I mean, to a
And
degree.
theft?
That's what I'm saying. Exactly. And you referred to them as Americans. I feel like we already addressed this in the beginning part of the podcast.
I mean, I would, as a person, like, that's not an option for me. I do, like, actual labor. I move around.
You can't just set up one of those drinking birds to do it for you?
No. I mean, and that is well played. That is like, the drinking bird that hits the, the space bar or whatever it is.
I've been a CEO for years.
So, like, this is something I can't even consider. I mean, if I have to call out sick, I have to have a 9-minute conversation with a computer voice on the phone.
I used to hate that shit.
So, from Christina's perspective, she works in the corporate world, and when COVID happened and pretty much everybody went remote, they were having issues that weren't immediate. It took time for them to be able to quantify how
it takes time to get frustrated.
Well, yes, because like you can be logged on, like that's level 1. You're logged on to your system, whatever. You walk away from your computer, and then things are put in place where it's like, oh yeah, your mouse has to move, X amount of time, blah 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 blah, and that's fine. And like all things might be green across the board in those metrics, but if no work is getting done, no work is getting done.
In fairness, a lot of people have jobs that don't really necessitate a lot of work. So you can skate by for a bit with that. And then obviously other jobs are much more demanding.
Yeah.
And then you actually do need to do it. There's no drinking bird in sight for you.
Christina, like her company, they had a big problem. While their metrics for observing if people were in the program doing their job, productivity went into the toilet.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Because nothing was actually getting done.
And
so
Pornhub hits went through the roof.
Well, yes, it did.
They got to train these birds better to them out. Like,
dude, I had one of those drinking birds. Oh, my God, it was on Pornhub all the fucking time. I had to fire the guy.
So a little bit more from this article. The Harris poll also found that 78% of the American workers they polled reported not using all of their paid time off, with nearly as many saying they wish they were able to take all of their available days off. About a third of respondents said the biggest barriers to them taking more time off was pressure to always be available and meet work demands, as well as heavy workload.
If I can jump in real quick. So in Christina, my wife's position, she has unlimited PTO, but she can't touch that.
So she has nothing.
She has essentially nothing because she's afraid to touch it because there are consequences.
You can do whatever you want, but if you're not here at 5 a.m. tomorrow, they're fired.
Yeah. That's absolutely ridiculous, but I'll finish off this article with this paragraph. More than half of the employees polled said they'd taken work-related calls while on vacation or PTO, and 86% said they checked an email from their boss under those circumstances, suggesting that work time and personal time may be bleeding into each other in both directions. So this is sort of the way of like millennials, Gen Zers, and maybe a little bit of Gen Xers. They're nervous. This is a very anxious group of generations.
It certainly seems to be,
so
for sure.
Instead of just taking the PTO because you might get denied, it's just kind of slyly take it.
Right. So you're subverting the system to try to... Because you don't want to have that interaction.
Yeah. And it's a nice thing if you can get it, but just like you were saying, Justin, you can't necessarily do that. You have to be boots on the ground.
I'm on the ground. I'm on the ground. There's nothing I can do I can't. Oh, I wish I could just build a mannequin out of those birds.
Well, yeah, it's a drinking bird. Yeah, and you need a few of them if you want them to do your job.
I think I'm gonna need 120 at least.
Yeah, at least. Yeah. Well, I'm sorry, you got to put the work in. You can't just be sitting around on your ass all day waiting for Elon Musk to build the birds for you. He will, though. Man's a genius.
So this raises an interesting point of these people feel like they can't take the time off because they feel pressured. We did a podcast a while ago about company culture.
We did.
And they try to make you feel like you're a part of a family
here.
Yes. So it seems like there's sort of this battle between these people desperately want to try to find some sort of work-life balance. Now, how can you do that if now all of a sudden you're a part of this? Oh, we're a part of a family. You're an Amazonian or whatever the fuck they call you in Amazon.
I get this.
It'd be great if they said that.
We get these all the time. So at my job, and it's not super often, it's maybe every other week. So the postmaster will appear from his office and like he has this, what we call service talk. So everybody has to gather around. And he's like, it's always like, oh, we are a family. We do everything for each other, blah, 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 blah. Half the workforce hate each other.
Just like a family.
Yeah.
But like, they try to do this to you, that you owe something to this.
Yeah.
Never forget, it's a job.
That's kind of where I would like to jump in on it then, because I
Please.
think that, and I guess it's described in my taxes as self-employed, but I think that that's kind of, I feel like that's where like the root of the issue lies. I'm a big fan of anthropology, certainly no expert on it, but I just like to read about it. And what I will say is that if you look back into human history, then you've got the myriad of human history is along the lines of that. There was no such thing as work and life. Work and life were the same thing because you worked to live, which really is the same as it is today. So in other words, like I observe this as one in which we've really fundamentally separated these things, compartmentalized them. And I think that really, like for me, that's the question. It's that, why did that happen? Why is that the case? Why is work so different from life? Because we do have, like, even if you don't have a job, you have to work to live. You have to, raise crops or, like go and kill an animal or something like that.
Panhandle.
Yeah, panhandle. Exactly. That's a job. Yeah, it is a job.
Still got to roll out of
I
your
know what you
cardboard.
do when you're not doing this podcast. We've talked. But it's that no matter what, we always work. You have to do physical and mental effort to exist in the world. And so now it's like so compartmentalized that we actually are drawing this line. Even right here in this podcast, we're saying that there's work and there's life. But life is obviously the all-encompassing thing. Yeah. So it's bizarre that we feel the need to separate them. That's really telling us something about what's wrong, I think.
Yeah, because a lot of people feel, as we already talked about, 50%, if not more, have quiet quit. So that's, as you said at the top of this podcast, that's a level of dissatisfaction.
Yeah.
So if you're dissatisfied at your job, then you're going to go to that resenteeism aspect of it, and you're not going to enjoy what you're doing.
To me, this points to a fundamental issue. Yeah. The way in which we are, basically assigning the labor, assigning the jobs more or less. And myself, despite being, a big fan of Cuban and like all of these other billionaires, myself, one of them, obviously, and you guys should really work a lot harder because I'm pretty disgusted looking around this podcast. But that said, I do think that there's very much so some sort of a divide that exists here where people are very disconnected from work, and my point is basically that it should be natural. It's not that you should always enjoy the work that you have to do. I have to go out into my backyard and like whatever, dig a hole, plant a plant. Lady tells me to do this, that, the other. Right?
It's closer to you.
Yeah. It's that I don't always enjoy the hard work that I have to do, but there's a satisfaction in it that I feel after the fact.
I think the levels of separation have grown so wide as society has ballooned itself out that people, they don't get that direct satisfaction. So with the example of like the homestead or anything like that, you do the work, you see the immediate results.
Yeah.
Society is so blown out now that the closer you get to is that you get the money.
Yeah, it's very much so.
There's no satisfaction.
It's about consumption. We live in a society that very much so values like goods and these types. Basically, all the bullshit that we all know about. I don't need to, fucking describe it.
No, of course not. Yeah.
But it's these superficial things, and then you also dive into like these complexities that exist, where you've got a CEO who's getting paid 200 times what his lowest paid employee is getting paid, and they have completely divergent views on that. And like my personal opinion on it is just that there's no way that any human being, of all the people that I've met, there's no way that you could be doing 200 times the work that I'm doing to necessitate that
paycheck. Equation's hard to swallow.
If you want to tell me that you're working twice as hard as me, absolutely. Like I enjoy taking my time off. I go and get fucking drunk at the bar and this and that, and I could be working. Cool. If you want to tell me 3 times, all right. You're a really fucking hard worker. Get after it,
200 times a pill.
200 times? It's not possible.
It requires 200 of me to do what you do.
Exactly.
Fucking bullshit.
And not for nothing, when you look at that person who's making the 200 times pay, they're at the bar more than I am. So I know you're not.
Well, that's what you're doing wrong.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's what I observe to be the issue, though.
Yeah, and it's like the illusion of fairness. Obviously, it doesn't really exist, but that is a fucking pill to fucking swallow.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I would even not even argue for fairness in most jobs, because for somebody like me that is actively trying to prove himself, then I want the attention. I'm trying to be the squeaky wheel. So, like, give me the fucking raise. Don't give the person that's asleep in the chair.
Well, like, give the person that's hungry for it.
The fairness then comes in the form of the work that you've put forth. And that's the meritocracy, which was pointed at before. Yeah. But I think that that in some ways that this country is like become somewhat disconnected from these ideals. Yeah. Where people basically have this notion, and obviously I was teasing about it before, but people have this notion that you could achieve what this billionaire has simply through hard work. And they're ignoring that there is very much so a system that's in place that supports existing social structures, more or less. Yeah. If you're born poor, you've got your fucking, people who basically excel beyond that, but it's a rarity.
Yes. And that's kind of like the American dream thing. You have the chance. You have the opportunity. But if we want to get into math and do the numbers, it's a very small thing. And also, like, there are structures that lift up people.
Yeah. There's the amount of Jay-Z's that exist. You could count on one hand. Yeah.
What I want to dive right back into, though, is the satisfaction thing, because I can kind of correlate that to what I do. I can even correlate it to working on this podcast versus what I do outside of this podcast. I find a lot more satisfaction working on this podcast because it's something that we're all growing. We're all working on it together. And then when I do a short, or when I cut up the podcast and I put up on YouTube or TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, wherever, and it does well there, I feel a certain level of satisfaction for having done the job well.
We're old friends. We're in this together, sink or swim, and we all have a vested interest in this to succeed. Yeah. For us.
I think you hit the nail on the head right there. When I look back, again, the anthropology, which I take an interest in, it's that when you look back at jobs that existed before, modern industrialization, let's say, past 200 years, you're looking at people, everybody the same, every part of the planet, color, religion, whatever, doesn't matter. All of these people had a fundamental role in what was going to happen to them tomorrow. They were harvesting their own crops. They were hunting for an animal. They were working with people in their communities. They knew these people, etc. And this is something which is, basically when you look back at history, it's the facts are just reinforced nonstop. And now we live in a very different world where we're very disconnected. And what we replaced that with was like a faceless boss that demands productivity. Yeah. We all know what the word means, productivity, but it doesn't mean anything really. And
I'll tie that in too with your point, because every week, like, I feel productive because I've done everything I needed to do. It resets every week. Yep. And it's actively driving me insane.
What you do for you, and that's just it. It's like, go back to antiquity and you did something to help out. Doesn't matter. You're chieftain in your fucking village or something, right? This is something that you can readily observe. You can see how it helped this person.
It's change you can see.
Exactly. Yeah. You can see it, and it filters through your community. You can observe it. You're living with like 200, 500 people, and it can go all the way up to like 1 million, but not much beyond that. You look at the modern world and you do something your boss tells you, raise the productivity, you will never see that unless you own the stock. And even then, it's very disconnected. It's not human. And that's, I think, what we've lost in this way. And it's interesting in the sense that people are, and I don't mean the CEO who has the incentive to say that basically what I'm describing, they're basically like, that doesn't exist and this is made up, but that regular people like ourselves, that they don't observe this. And even when it's presented to them, it's sometimes like it's a pill to swallow. And that's what's built into our American culture, and I think Western culture, and maybe global culture so much. It's that we're supposed to have this, I think, false idea that like you could live in this billion-person society, and if you do something for the billionaire, the top of the food chain, that somehow it's going to filter down to you, despite that there's 100 or hundreds of millions of people that it has to go through to get there.
Well, it's possible. It's just not probable.
Delightful.
That being said, I have a hefty inheritance coming from this little dog that I was taking care of for this old rich broad.
Oh, good for you.
Yeah. She left it to the dog first, but...
I was going to say, is it an inheritance from a dog?
Did you marry the dog?
Well, I take care of it now, and
It sounds like he married it.
The poinsettias are coming in nicely.
Wow. If we're talking about you killing dogs, we're going to talk over the podcast, because I'm way into dogs.
All right.
Yeah.
That's weird.
So we have this idea of, the company culture,
Right.
the corporate culture.
Yeah.
They want you to work. They don't care about you, your family, anything. They won't even give you a raise. But all of the things that we've been talking about is trying to find that work-life balance. And you were talking about how there's that dichotomy between, because the work is a part of your life, but it's like the free time. So if we want to redefine it, work free time, or work things that you actually fucking enjoy, lifestyle. So because a lot of things that you could do, if you keep yourself to that 9 to 5, or at least that 8-hour shift, then you have 16 hours to do what you want. Now you might spend 8 sleeping. Maybe you spend 6 or 7 sleeping though. And you still have time to do the things that you would either like to do or have to do outside of your job, like mowing the lawn.
You also have that other stuff that you have to do at home.
Yeah.
That's technically work, but you have to, it's just the day-to-day shit.
It's self-investment work.
Yeah.
It is in your best interest.
Yeah.
We are talking about masturbation.
Always. So, all right.
It is self-help, though. Let's not ignore that, Dan. Come on. Sexual health is very important.
That's a different episode.
All right.
Save it for mental health or something. I don't know.
It's a part of life.
Mental health, sex, whatever. Not the work-life balance episode.
But I have a OnlyFans and I just masturbate on it. It's a big income.
Okay, so for the first 15 years of my career, I was a full overtime guy. I took anything you threw at me.
Yeah.
Made a ton of fucking money. It was great. It was everything. And I was a young man. Remember, I started when I was 19 years old. I had the energy. I had the want for things. I wanted, for me, for whatever reason, one of the big things I wanted for myself to be able to buy a house.
Yeah.
We live in New Jersey. It hasn't been easy to do.
I think only 2 people in New Jersey actually own a house.
And that might be right. We'll have to do some fact checking.
Wells Fargo and Chase Bank.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, businesses are people too.
Thank you, Mitt Romney.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
But I had that fight because I had clear goals of what I wanted to accomplish. And I was willing to sacrifice a lot of my social life. I worked in some years 80 plus hours a week, no question. I would do my job, and as an extension of my job, I would drive 2 hours with the mail at the end of the day to the plant in South Jersey. I'd go in at 8 o'clock in the morning. I'd get home at 1:30 in the morning. And I was happy to do it because I was chasing that money because I had goals to achieve. Now, over the years, my job was good. And for those 15 years, I crushed it. I made all that money. I accomplished my goals. But when that was said and done, man, I was tired.
Yeah.
I had lost friendships. I had lost connection with my family.
It's superficial. I think that
absolutely
we all do that. I think that that's an aspect of just describing. Once again, I think it's the American condition, a Western condition, maybe all people. I don't know. But I think that we all do that. I definitely do that myself. And it's fleeting in many ways. I think that once one achieves some semblance of that, it's that you've got an idea in your head of what that is worth.
Absolutely.
And then once you have it, you realize that it's not quite as valuable.
It's a whole nother bag of beans at that point.
Exactly, yeah. And I feel as far as that goes, it's bringing it back to that work-life balance. It's that my genuine sentiment is that no matter how much money you make, right? Because that's really what we're describing it as. Is that we're saying that work is about making money and then life is about living life.
Right.
Life implies I'm doing things that make me happy, contentment. And I think that that's exactly what we're doing wrong. I think that in reality, it's that, don't get me wrong, not every moment of your life is supposed to be a happy one or an easy one.
No,
it's impossible.
Life is fraught with its challenges, work included. But I think that that's exactly it. It's that we're doing something that we feel in the moment is displeasing in an almost metaphysical way, where it's I really don't like this. It's not that it's hard right now. It's that I actually don't like it, you know, but I'm doing it because if I get this money, then I can live my life. And enjoy that. And I think that's exactly how we're getting it wrong. And it's very much so taught to us. So I'm not trying to preach from a fucking cloud because I absolutely have done this and still do this to a degree.
It's practically the system.
Yeah.
It is,
But I think that that's just it. I think that the way in which one goes about it is that, and you implied that you don't do that quite anymore.
Oh, and I will tag on where the change came and what that means for me in a second once you finish.
Well, I mean, the gist of it is I think that life and work are meant to be the same thing. they're not meant to be two separated entities that we have to like favor one and not the other. I think that life includes work. And if we are doing the right kind of work, then presumably
then
you
you
would
enjoy it.
Yeah. Or even if not
And
enjoy
you never
it, that
work
you'll.
a day in your life.
Yeah. Well, yeah, as I say, I hate that I led
It-
myself into that, you fucking motherfucker.
But you are right when you say that we're pretty much ushered into it, because what is school?
Yeah,
Right.
It's
exactly.
essentially the same basic content. Who liked going to school? Who actually fucking liked going to
I don't
school?
see any hands
Yeah,
raised
no.
here.
It was all right on some days.
But like, I went to school just because. Like sometimes,
If
And it's
I
just
had
like,
the thought of
actively hated doing it.
agency,
Yeah,
and not that this was expected from me, I would have done anything but.
yeah. And as a kid too, you frequently skip school,
Right.
And this is pretty much the same equivalent that we've been talking about. It's just people are just skipping work, but still kind of trying to do it so
Yeah.
they can save face.
We're being forced into these roles to fulfill a particular place in society that doesn't necessarily result in the happiness or the contentment that we seem to think that we should have or deserve, or whatever word you want to put in there.
To tag on to that, the point I was going to eventually make is, so like, yes, after 15 years, I kind of got like my big goals out of the way. And then goals changed because now I had a house, and now the house needs maintenance and care.
Yeah.
And stuff like that.
I know about that. I see Moses nodding his head over there.
But now my priorities changed. So like, I gave up the overtime and probably about $40,000 a year.
In New
From-
Jersey,
from-
that's the equivalent of like $10 for all of
Yeah,
y'all.
more or less. Yeah. Thank you.
That buys a sandwich here.
But so I could
A
have
stale
peace
one.
of mind. Like, I wasn't making the capital, but I was being able to have the time
Yeah.
to accomplish stuff at my home, the work at home that's in your face, that you see accomplishment. You do a job, you see the thing you built.
Yeah.
It's there in front of you.
Yeah.
I had to, and I willingly did it, and I got questioned by a lot of people because I was the big money guy. I chased every dollar. And then when I dropped off, I didn't just drop off from overtime. I straight down to 40 hours a week.
Yeah.
And I'm much happier now.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you have more time to do the things that you like to
Exactly
do.
right.
Yeah.
And I remember, like, I was not dissimilar from you, but I definitely tried to put my foot down when I was, we'll just say a kid, but when I was in my 20s and I was working for that electrical company.
Oh, yes, yeah.
There were multiple times that it was a weird structure that they had, because you had to go to the site to actually do the work because you're repairing stuff. But your home was your office. Like, every once in a while, if you needed to do a meeting, you'd meet somewhere like at a Sheraton in, like, I don't know,
Paramus.
Whatever.
North Jersey, Paramus, sure. Some North Jersey.
Shout out to Paramus.
Yeah. Some North Jersey town that you didn't want to be at,
Right.
and it took you 2 hours to get there.
Right.
But one of the little dichotomies that they had there is that you would automatically always have 40 hours. But the thing is, though, you don't make any overtime if you don't work beyond that. And they would put stuff onto your calendar, but then most of the time the call center would call you and they'd be like, hey, we got a job for you at midnight in New York City.
I vaguely remember you always having to go to these calls.
Yeah.
At like the most bizarre hours of the
I
morning.
remember this
Yeah,
so well. Yeah,
As if
Dan-
you were an ambulance driver. Or
when
an
we
EMT
were
or
when we were
something.
living together, Dan, I remember there was so many nights where I was just like wasted randomly at like midnight, and you would like roll up and be like, Dan, awesome. Let's get drunk together so that I feel less bad about what I'm doing right now. And you're like, no, I can't do that because I'm on call until 3 a.m. I'm like, I'm sorry, what the fuck does that mean?
Yeah. We did have an on-call aspect of that, too. It was essentially like, this is my period. For a week, every month, you were on call.
Yes.
And since I was one of the junior guys, I was always the primary. I would get called. I can do a number of stories. This is probably not the right episode. We probably don't have
Right,
enough time to go
right.
through all of them. But the point was, like, there were times where they wouldn't put stuff on my calendar. I'm like, I guess I'm not working that day. So I'll go visit my sisters or visit my mom
Right.
or visit my dad.
You'll do
or,
a life thing.
Or I'll go to a Flyers game. I'll go to a concert. Sorry, I was a Flyers
Live
fan.
your
everybody.
life a little bit, as it were.
Yeah. I will go and do these things. And then at the last minute, I'll get a call from Costa Mesa and they would say, hey, can you go do this job? And I'm like, no, I already made these plans. And then they would actively use it against me.
Yes.
So they would stop
Well, yes.
putting
Yeah.
things on my calendar even further. I'm like, I do want to make money, but you just fucked me over by not putting anything on my calendar. And now all of a sudden you want me to work with no time to really
Well,
prep.
I mean, you just threw your bootstraps right into the office, and they're just trying to help you to pull them up. I don't.
It's not too different from human nature. It's spitefulness.
Yeah.
They're trying to force situations. That's unfortunately the way it is. It's the way
Yeah.
outside of work, it's the way a lot of people treat each other.
Whenever you're talking about, I mean, the subject that we're talking about, basically, like the whole work life thing, you're still just dealing with people. and how they respond and interact with that. Because like we're talking about it as like lower level people, you know, like bottom of the totem pole kind of shit. But the bottom line is that there's also, you know, there are the people above us, the managers, and then the people above them. And you go all the way up to the top and they're still human beings making stupid fucking decisions that have no reflection on, like they have no concept as to how other people live, which is, you know, and like as much as I was making the trope before, it's that there's people who make decisions for us. You know, all of us who are like, whatever you want to call it, lower to lower middle class, even upper middle class, where you've got people above you who are making decisions, you know, kind of like basically what you played for us before, Dan. Yeah. This is a person who's never worked before in their life, right? They've never had a proper job.
But will lecture you day and night about work ethic.
Exactly.
And those who can't people, teach.
Yeah, those who can't teach. Exactly, Moses. Yeah. And so like you've got people like this, and this is really, I mean, this is the state of just the world that we live in, I think, where you've got people who have never, and maybe it was always this way, but you've got people who've never actually done any of the work. You know, this whole world keeps turning, you know, they keep making steel and delivering mail and do whatever the fuck you do, Dan. And Moses, you're just homeless, but we've always had those.
I would say I'm more white shirt now just because it's a desk job, but I did do the blue collar work.
No, exactly.
I was an electrician.
My point is that there's people who actually are doing all of this work, and presumably, I'll put it this way: I don't think that Elon Musk is listening to this podcast right now.
No,
I don't think that's it.
We don't have enough of a presence on Twitter for him to care.
Yeah,
it's called X,
everything all at once.
Yeah. I refuse to call it fucking X. To get with the program.
It's still Twitter.
It's Twitter.
Dan's gonna get disappeared.
X gonna give it to you.
Oh, we're all fucked up.
My point. Once I come for him. My point is that these rules and these I guess really what we were talking about was like an aspect of the culture of it and what have you. We allow these things to be dictated to us to a degree by people who have never worked a fucking day in their life. And like some of us work harder than others, no doubt. You know, Dan, you fucking like you get it more than you should, you know. Yeah. Like you're a harder worker than anybody that I know. Well, and Moses, you are a homeless man. I don't know how you pay for shit. I don't know how you got here tonight.
It's the dog.
God damn it.
He makes muffins.
It's the dichotomy of mental illness. Yeah. Dan can't help but do the best job possible.
Exactly. And that's what it is, though. I think that there's an interesting dichotomy here. And I think if you look at any aspect of American culture, Western culture, the bottom line is that the people who dictate this culture to us, the people who make the actual rules, how long are you supposed to be at the job, how much effort should you be putting in, so on and so forth. These are not people who work. They're not working the way that the people are working who they're actually giving these rules to. And that's the disconnection that I wish more people recognized. Because that to me, and maybe I'm wrong, but that's what I genuinely observe. I see a shit ton of fucking people who are working their asses off in various ways, more or less, right? And they're getting told that they're not working enough, pretty much universally, even when they're a Dan and they are busting their ass. But even if they're doing a Moses thing, they're still getting told they're not doing enough, they're not contributing enough. We need more productivity. We need more GDP, so on and so forth. And this is the disconnect that I see. And the people who are saying that to us are people who are making, you know, millions of dollars a year. And for the most part have never actually had a real job like anybody in this fucking room.
And it's frowned upon for you to put your foot down. Be like, no, you're not going to do this to me. They made a term for it. And it's, you know, kind of like in a negative connotation, quiet quitting. Yeah. Well, no, it's just me saying, I'm going to do this job. And you're not going to hoodwink me into doing someone else's job, because then now are you going to pay me this person's wage as well? I need to have some sort of incentive. If you're not willing to give it to somebody, then what are we doing? You're taking advantage of me. And that's the essence of work-life balance. Don't be taken fucking advantage of.
Yeah. If the point I can make, it kind of tags on to like I said, after 15 years, I had to readjust because I could die making all that money, or I could see my friends and family again. And I made that choice, and I made it gladly.
I would be in the same boat, too. Yeah. Because there were a number of times when I was working at that electrical job, I had to be up at like 4 a.m. so I could be in Manhattan at 6 a.m. And I get a call from, you, Mr. Ballwanger. And it'd be like, hey, man, what are you doing? I'm like, dude, it's like 11 at night and I got to be up at 4. It's like, shit, we're drinking. And I'm like, oh, well, I'm sorry. I'm stuck working this godforsaken job that wants me to be in Manhattan at 6 a.m.
Everybody's got the right to walk away from their personal profession, whatever it is. And that's why we have slave catchers.
And it's all right. So it's also like any of you that are listening out here, we're all at different points in our lives. Like my job, I do the best job I can for my customers. I've been written up like 5 times in the past quarter because I am not doing things the way that my 21-year-old boss wants me to do them. And well, actually, they're not even really a boss. It all flows downhill.
Yeah.
That's how the government works.
Government.
But like, I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. And every time they bring me in, I'm like, that's fine. And if you don't like what I'm doing, fire me.
Yeah. And that's ultimately, I think, one of the better strategies for a work-life balance. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to get fired. Might be a little bad advice.
No. And like I said, different people, different stages of life,
but
blah, blah, blah. But like where I'm at now, it's like, yell at me all you want.
Yeah.
I do a very proficient job. I would say I'm better than 95% of the people I work with. And then you know that. But if you're going to keep writing me up and be upset with me, that's fine.
Yeah.
I'm not afraid of you.
But the wisdom in what you're saying is know your worth to your job.
And also, no, it's a job.
Yeah, it's a job. Know your worth. And if they try to say, hey, you're not pulling your weight, it's like, the fuck I am.
Right.
So if you want to do something about it, we can talk about
And
it.
really think about it.
Yeah.
What's more important? Your life, your family, your job.
Yeah.
100% agree with that. I think that's something that people like overlook all too routinely, and not to sound like fucking Karl Marx about it, but like it's something that people should be comfortable talking about.
Yeah.
You know, like we should talk about that. Part of this system that we live in is one in which we act as if we're all fundamentally different from each other. But regardless as to religion, color of the skin, this and that, pretty much everybody
It's the human condition.
everybody that I run into is basically in the same socioeconomic class that I'm in. You know, like we all live in the same area. I don't live in a fucking mansion.
No.
And people who live in mansions aren't going to the same places as I am. They're going to nice bars. I'm going to dive bars. You know, it is what it is. But I feel like that's conversations that people should have, and they should approach it from their own position and not from what some fucking oligarch is telling us we should feel about it.
And like I said, I'm giving my own personal example, but like you have to find it for yourself. You have to. And like I said, we're all at different points. And like, yeah, if you're in that young hustle thing and you're chasing it, get after it. But like, it doesn't have to be that way forever. And when that turns, also recognize what's important in your life.
What I would say, too, if you're in that young hustle mode, you should stop to smell the roses every once in a while.
Oh, for sure.
Because don't piss away your 20s.
There's a lot of shit I missed out on.
Yeah, because I feel like to a degree, I did piss away a little bit of my 20s because I was constantly trying to get after it. Now, I was trying to do a work-life balance, but the work-life balance was mostly for my kids' sisters.
Right.
But at the same time, we have employers that don't value efficiency. And
it's all of them, Dan.
Yes, that's what I mean. They don't value efficiency, and that's how I work. And if you're not going to like, hey, you get to leave early now because you got 8 hours worth of work done in 5, then what the fuck are we really doing?
Right.
It's a fucking system that
you gotta find wherever you are in this chase, this stage of life. Treat yourself a little bit. Make sure you have time for your friends and family. If you're after it, get after it. But make sure you have that little bit of time. Yeah. You can't give it all up. You gotta have some fun, and it's not unless you're fucking fully manic. Then fine, do whatever your fucking bullshit is.
Treat yourself.
Don't prioritize the economy, despite that's what they say.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not your job to make the American economy great.
And whatever you believe, you kind of get one shot.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like,
we'll
this
all be dead
this
soon.
is your life.
Don't buy into the company culture. You have a family. See them. They're the ones that are going to be sad when you're dead.
Yeah.
The corporation, they don't give a fuck.
If I died tonight, I'd be replaced tomorrow. It's not even a question.
To quote Johnny Cash, you're just a number.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, that was
Vote Mitt Romney.
That's a depressing way to end it. Voting for Mitt Romney.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness gracious.
It's not great.
Is he still around?
I could work on it. I don't know. I think he might have died.
We can only be so lucky.
Yeah.
And we can only be so lucky for you to subscribe to this podcast. Leave us a 5-star review. Check us out on YouTube and Rumble. Make sure that you like, comment, share, and hit that notification bell. Be sure to hit that notification bell if you're listening to us on YouTube. YouTube does not like us. Follow us on social media. We are at Loud and Drunk on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. If you enjoyed this podcast, then bookmark loudandrunk.com. That is our home base. No matter what happens to us on YouTube or any of these social media platforms, you can always find us loudandrunk.com. So for Justin, Moses, and Tongo Wallbonger.
Oh, yeah, that's close enough. Yeah.
Where are you from?
He's Samoan.
Yeah, I was about to say.
Work makes you free, and the worker prevails.
I'm Dan, and until next time.
Lisa, if you don't like your job, you don't strike. You just go in every day and do it really half-assed. That's the American way.